In a near and dystopian future, being single is illegal. Society forces everyone to be in a relationship, and those who become newly single are sent to a peculiar hotel where they have 45 days to fall in love, or they'll be turned into animals. Interestingly, each person can choose which animal they'd like to become if they fail in their mission. Our introduction to this world is cold and unsettling. A woman gets out of her car in the middle of a field and shoots a donkey. Maybe he was an ex who had cheated on her and she's getting revenge. Our protagonist is David, an architect whose wife of 11 years has left him for another man. As a result, he's been taken to the hotel to find a new partner. David is accompanied by his dog, Bob, who is actually his brother, transformed after failing to find a match in time. Upon arrival, a receptionist interviews him and asks about his sexual preference. David says he's attracted to women, but then asks if he can choose both. The receptionist tells him that option is no longer available. She informs him he can only use facilities for solo sports. Volleyball and tennis courts are reserved for couples. He's told he'll be given a single room, but if he finds a partner in time, he'll be upgraded to a double to start their new life together. To form a couple, both people must share a unique trait. David, who is nearsighted, will need to find a woman who is also nearsighted. Before going to his room, the maid tells him he'll receive clothes, accessories, and shoes. David asks for shoes in a half size, but she tells him they only have whole numbers. In his room, the hotel manager and her husband explain the rules. They tell him that if he fails to fall in love and is turned into an animal, he shouldn't be too upset, because as an animal, he'll get another chance at love, though it will have to be with the same species. When they ask which animal he's chosen, David says, a lobster. They live over 100 years, stay fertile their entire lives. He loves the sea and is a good swimmer. The manager congratulates him. Most people choose to be dogs, and the world is already full of them. Then comes a bizarre rule. The maid handcuffs David's right hand to his belt and locks it to prevent him from seeking any solitary pleasure. The next morning at breakfast, David befriends Robert, who lisps, and John, who limps. The three of them are looking for partners who share their unique traits. They meet a woman with frequent nosebleeds and another described as heartless, but neither one is a match. Later, there's an assembly where the singles introduce themselves, sharing personal stories and defining traits. For example, one woman says her most notable quality is her beautiful smile. Throughout the day, the hotel organizes activities to help people mingle and form potential couples. At a party, David tries to connect with the woman who has nosebleeds. When she stains his shirt with blood, he gives her a bunch of cleaning tips, then realizes they have nothing in common. The day ends with a forest excursion, but not for a picnic. The guests hunt loners, rebels who fled the hotel to avoid becoming animals. With tranquilizer guns, they track and capture them. Each loner captured earns the guest one extra day in the hotel. David fails to catch anyone, watching his days tick down. Meanwhile, the hotel's star hunter is the heartless woman who holds the female record of 192 loners caught. The hotel encourages coupling using unorthodox methods, from forced frustration through bed stimulation to theatrical warnings about the dangers of being single, such as choking alone or being attacked without a protector. They try to convince everyone that being with someone, anyone, is better than being alone. One day, Robert is caught pleasuring himself. As punishment, his hand is burned in a toaster. On the shuttle to another singles center, David sits next to a woman obsessed with cookies. Desperate, she offers him favors in exchange for becoming her partner, but he's not interested. She then confesses she's thinking of jumping out her window if she has to stay single any longer. In the pool, John tries to get the attention of the nosebleed girl, but she ignores him. So in a desperate move, he smashes his nose against the pool's edge to make it bleed. When she sees him bleeding, she believes they share something and starts showing interest. They begin dating, and John secretly injures himself daily to maintain the illusion of a shared trait. Later, the manager officially declares them a couple. They move into a double room and eventually onto a yacht for a month. During this trial period, they'll be monitored, and if problems arise, they'll be assigned a child, because that usually helps. The scene ends with applause. This film shows how large-scale social norms, and what those around us expect from us, permanently shape our decisions and love lives, whether we're aware of it or not. The world in the film is structured to streamline pairing. It imposes rigid rules, short deadlines, and harsh punishments. This turns finding a partner into a matter of survival rather than a pursuit of genuine love, and as a result, relationships become shallow. The pressure and fear don't allow people to form real connections. The system rewards superficial matches and ignores feelings entirely. This may seem absurd or comedic, but the film uses these exaggerations to reflect our own norms and dating practices. We don't have laws banning singleness, but we do live in a culture that often labels single people as failures or behind in life. We don't have a timer to find a partner before turning into an animal, but we do face social pressure to couple up by a certain age or risk being seen as immature or left behind. More on that later. One day, David tries to flirt with a blonde woman with flawless hair who has only one day left at the hotel. He compliments her hair and asks if she likes his. She says it's dry and seems uninterested. Later, the manager asks the blonde how she wants to spend her final night. She chooses to spend it with her best friend, the nosebleed girl, who reads her a heartfelt letter expressing how much she'll miss her, how beautiful her hair is, and how empty the city will feel without her. But the blonde woman slaps her. Then she chooses to watch Stand By Me alone. The next day, she is transformed into a pony, still with perfect hair. Stand By Me is a film about friendship. Clearly, the blonde woman felt betrayed. Her best friend found a partner and is returning to the city while she's not. That slap was a reaction to the feeling of being left behind. It makes you think of people who seem happy for you when you find love, but deep down, feel envy or rejection. In the film, almost no one has a name, and people are matched based on trivial traits like a limp or nosebleeds. This shows just how superficial the relationships are. Having a name in this world gives you identity. Without a partner, you're just one of many. But if two people share even one odd trait, it's considered enough to build a relationship. The message seems to be, it doesn't matter who the other person is. What matters is that you look like you belong together. How many couples exist for this very reason? A few days later, the cookie-loving girl jumps out the window, just like she said she would, but she doesn't die on impact. Writhing in pain, she cries out, while the heartless woman nearby does absolutely nothing to help. With only 7 days left, David decides to fake it. He approaches the heartless woman pretending to be just as cold as she is. He makes cruel comments about the cookie girl, and his strategy works. The woman believes the act, though she's still suspicious. Later, in the jacuzzi, she pretends to choke on an olive to test him. David, sticking to the persona, does nothing. This finally convinces her, and the manager declares them an official couple. They're moved into a double room. Now David has to keep pretending that he doesn't care about anything, a difficult act to maintain. During an intimate moment, he almost kisses her and sleeps with his hand near her. This makes the heartless woman suspicious. To test him, she kills David's dog, his brother, and watches his reaction. At first, David acts indifferent. But later, she catches him crying in the bathroom. She tries to take him to the manager to have him turned into an undesirable animal, one doomed to be alone forever. But David fights back, hits her, and escapes. When she chases after him, David appears with a tranquilizer gun and knocks her out. The maid helps him and promises to keep the secret, though David doesn't understand why. David thinks of taking revenge, maybe hitting her in the stomach like she did to his brother, but because she's unconscious and wouldn't feel it, he changes his plan. Instead, he sends her off to be turned into an animal. In addition to the formal laws of this world, the hotel does everything it can to push people into coupling up. It bans solitary pleasure, designates couple-only zones, and offers dramatic lessons about the dangers of being single. It sounds absurd, but even though we don't have specific zones for couples or exaggerated public warnings, TV, stores, magazines, and movies constantly bombard us with the message that finding love and getting married is essential to happiness. They instill a fear of growing old alone, exclude and marginalize single people, and ignore the reality that not everyone wants or needs to start a family. All of this constant pressure pushes us to see the world in black and white, just like the film does. Shoes must be whole sizes, sexual preferences must fit binary categories, and being single is bad, while being in a couple is good. This affects our behavior and romantic choices deeply. Loved ones want us to marry quickly, and that often leads to arguments, or people avoiding social events just to skip the "why are you still single" conversation. With that pressure, we get anxious. We start acting like the characters in the film. We look for a partner not out of love, but out of fear, to fit in socially, and to ease the discomfort that comes with being single. We pretend to share interests with someone just to be liked. We settle because someone looks good on paper. We overlook red flags just to avoid being alone, etc., etc. So maybe, after all, we're not so different from the characters in the film. David escapes the hotel and stumbles into the woods, where he meets a group of loners, led by a woman as strict as the hotel's manager. She tells him he can stay there forever, but romantic relationships are strictly forbidden. Those who break the rule face severe punishment, like the two who had their lips cut off for flirting. That's how David is welcomed to the group. Among the loners, a woman with dark hair and myopia, just like David, feels drawn to him immediately, but because of the rules, they can only be friends. Later, during a loner hunt, hotel guests close in. Robert finds David and tries to catch him. Desperate, David tries to win him over, telling him he's his only true friend and that he misses him. But with only 2 days left, Robert is focused on survival. Just in time, the dark-haired woman intervenes, attacking Robert and saving David. At the same time, the hotel maid and the loner's leader are hiding nearby. The maid, secretly a loner spy, shares intel about the hotel. She's tired of her partner, but doesn't want to end up as a hotel guest. The leader tells her to be patient and promises her a place in the forest after the coming attack. Once a month, 4 loners pretend to be 2 couples and go shopping in the city. This time, the leader and her partner are joined by David and the dark-haired woman. At the mall, a policeman spots David walking alone and demands to see his marriage certificate. David says his wife has the document. The officer is suspicious, but then the dark-haired woman shows up, pretending to be his partner, and they manage to convince the officer. Later, they visit the leader's parents, who think she has a high-powered job and travels for business. The others pretend to be her co-workers, while David and the dark-haired woman pose as a married couple with children. Back in the forest, the two talk late into the night, struggling to repress the attraction growing between them. The night of the attack arrives. With help from the maid, the loners sneak into the hotel. The leader and the dark-haired woman overpower the hotel manager and her husband in their room. The leader interrogates the husband, asking if he truly loves his wife. He says he does. Then she asks if he could live without her if she died. He replies, yes, since they already spend most of their time apart because of her job. So the leader gives him a gun and tells him to shoot his wife to save himself. He doesn't hesitate. He points and fires. But the gun isn't loaded. The entire point was to expose how little they truly cared for one another, to prove that their relationship was shallow. David escaped a society that smothered him with harsh rules and joined the rebels, but he realizes this new group has its own rigid rules too. The loners rejected love, believing all relationships are shallow and selfish, but in doing so, they created a different kind of strict system. The loner leader, likely scarred by a previous experience, is convinced that relationships are meaningless, and so she forbids any emotional connections within the group, trying to prevent people from forming deep bonds. The loners seem to represent those who, after being burned by love or disillusioned by the pressures of romance, choose permanent singleness as a way to protect their freedom. Today, more and more people are starting to see being single as a valid path to happiness and independence. But the film reminds us that even rebellion has rules. To maintain that freedom, the loners must suppress something as natural and uncontrollable as feelings and desire through extremely rigid discipline. Meanwhile, David finds John dining on the yacht with his assigned partner and their assigned child, all wearing matching striped shirts, like prisoners. David tells the nosebleed woman that John has been faking his bloody noses just to stay with her, but she slaps David and John kicks him off the yacht. Better to ignore betrayal than be alone. The loners return to the forest. That night, the maid joins them. In the days that follow, David and the dark-haired woman grow closer. One time, David gets jealous when another man gives her a rabbit, her favorite dish. Another time, they play the same music, dance together, and end up kissing. On another trip to the city, they once again visit the leader's parents. The parents play guitar, and feeling free to act like a real couple, David and the dark-haired woman kiss passionately. The leader sees them and becomes visibly uncomfortable. She interrupts them, asking them to respect her parents, though the leader's mother says she doesn't mind. Back in the forest, David and the dark-haired woman plan their escape. They want to live together in the city. She writes their plan in a diary, but before they can act, the leader finds it. She discovers both their forbidden love and their escape plan. The leader is furious, but she doesn't confront them directly. She has something more devious in mind. She leaves David alone, but the dark-haired woman isn't so lucky. The leader tricks her into thinking she's taking her to fix her myopia in the city. Instead, she leaves her blind. The dark-haired woman is outraged. She confronts the leader and asks why she blinded her and not David. This reaction might make us think she didn't truly love David, that maybe she was with him out of convenience. But we should remember that the film plays heavily with irony and ambiguity. If that were true, maybe David was the only one who loved genuinely throughout the film, or maybe she only acted cold to hide her feelings from a leader who despises love. Or maybe this just shows that even when you try to escape society, its effects still follow you. In a society that reinforces selfishness and represses emotion, acting selfishly seems like the norm. She tries to attack the leader but mistakenly kills the maid, tricked by the leader into believing the maid was her target. Then, in a strange twist, the leader forgives her and allows her to leave with David, likely to prove that now that they no longer share a defining trait, the relationship won't survive. At first, the dark-haired woman hides her blindness, but eventually, she tells David the truth. She's afraid he'll leave her now that they no longer have anything in common. David, although worried, decides to stay. He helps her adapt with little games to strengthen her sense of smell and touch. As days go by, they try to find other things in common, but realize they share very little beyond their current situation. David wants to kiss her, but without anything to bond them, she says it's no longer possible. So, David comes up with a plan: kill the leader, escape the woods, and blind himself so they'll be the same again. That night, they set the plan in motion. David captures the leader, ties her up, and leaves her in an open grave, letting wild dogs finish the job. After the dark-haired woman goes blind, her relationship with David begins to cool. Eventually, we see David considering blinding himself, believing that superficial similarities are necessary to stay together. This is because both grew up with the idea that couples must share specific traits to be compatible. They've internalized that expectation. In our lives, too, we follow many social rules and norms that don't always make sense, but we rarely question them. The film seems to ask us to think, Do the rules we follow in relationships really have to be this way, or are they just things we've absorbed over a lifetime of social pressure? Wearing civilian clothes, David and the dark-haired woman leave the forest and enter a diner. David asks the waiter for a knife and heads to the bathroom. He bites on a napkin to muffle his scream as he prepares to blind himself. The woman waits, but time passes, and David doesn't return. Suddenly, the story ends, leaving David's fate and the future of their relationship up to our imagination. Throughout the film, we've seen two groups, the regime and the loners, opposite sides that both commit the same mistake. Both try to control love. The regime tries to force it. The loners try to repress it. Both attempt to manage something that can't be managed. That may be one of the film's biggest messages. Love cannot be demanded, negotiated, forced, or erased. Love is free. It lands where it wants, arrives when it decides, and leaves when it pleases. David and the dark-haired woman are the clearest example of this. They weren't forced to be together. There were no deadlines or rules in their relationship. Their love simply happened, despite all the restrictions imposed by both worlds. They are the only couple in the film that seems truly compatible. So perhaps the message about relationships is, if we're looking for genuine love, maybe the best thing we can do is let it happen naturally. At the end of the film, we're not told what David decides, whether he blinds himself or runs away. The director intentionally leaves the ending open. Some try to guess. If David blinds himself for love, the film might seem to reinforce the idea that being in a relationship is the ultimate goal. If he runs away, it might imply that solitude is better, like the loners believe. But by not closing the story, the director gives us the freedom to imagine the ending that makes sense to us, to imagine our own rules, our own ideals. Maybe you don't feel comfortable following societal expectations. Maybe you prefer to find your own path, either with someone or alone. Or maybe you're fine with the norms that already exist. Or maybe you just want to let life happen, free from the pressure and expectations of others.